Welcome to Midnight in America, your source for the most provocative global affairs content on the internet. This week's guest is Professor Samuel Cohn of the Texas A&M University, who joins us to discuss the sociological bases of terrorism. It's Midnight in America, 3 p.m. in Sydney, Australia. Sam Cohn, what time is it where you are?
11 p.m.
And where are you? And where are you?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. Well, thank you for joining us from the great or sometimes not so great state of Texas. Look, today we really want to talk about terrorism. And I know that you're a sociologist with many different research interests. Frankly, I was surprised to find that terrorism was one of them. So tell us a little, how did you get involved in the sociology of terrorism?
Yes, I'm an engaged sociologist, as is the host of the show, Babones. And essentially, sociologists who only talk about what they want to talk about talk to themselves. Or talk to technical colleagues.
Right.
Essentially, the responsibility of social science is to answer the questions the public wants to see answered. People are terrified about terrorism. They are concerned about it. It makes no sense why anyone would choose to strap on a dynamite vest and kill themselves. And the targets seem incomprehensible. And given what's explained to us in our media, the motivation for why one should do this is incomprehensible. It's our job to try to figure out the incomprehensible stuff and make sense of it. It took a long time to do that. This was not easy.
But some people may say, that's more like a psychological topic. You said what drives someone to strap on a suicide belt. Why is that sociology and not psychology?
Because concerns that people have are actually not random forms of terrorism that exist of American against American or Britain against Britain or French versus French. Generally, when they think about terrorism, and never mind their definitions of terrorism aren't the pretty ones social scientists use.
Okay.
They are concerned that someone from the Mideast is going to kill them.
Okay.
And that a bomb is going to be set off in their city, or a plane is going to fly into one of their buildings, and over grievances that are not particularly well explained to them, and they don't know why this is happening. So it's sociological that it represents some sort of event in the Middle East,
right,
affecting some sort of event in the West. In fact, it's also sociological because these things have a history,
right,
they have a political science, and they have an economic.
Right.
All the things are based on fundamental political, economic, world system dynamics. So in a loose, sloppy way, the people who are victims of these things are absolutely innocent victims, but there were a lot of causes for them.
Right.
Some of which are contemporary and some of which go back hundreds of years.
Now, you're talking to us from Austin, Texas, where, of course, we just had this series of bombings in Austin, Texas. But you wouldn't consider that terrorism. That's more just a garden variety crime of some kind. I mean, why is that not what you're thinking about when you think terrorism?
All right, terrorism, not every bomb is a terrorist bomb.
Okay.
This guy was the Austin bomber, and I will point out the frequency of bombs in Austin, Texas is significantly lower than the frequency of bombs in Yemen. It's significantly lower than the frequency of bombs in Iraq.
Okay.
It takes very little to get Americans terrified about bombs, and yet they don't seem to think that anyone should be bothered about large numbers of bombs in Yemen or in Iraq, where people should just take it and still love the United States. That said, you have one particular guy with a grievance committing random acts of violence. The random does not make for the terrorism.
Okay.
To some extent, terrorism is based on a cause.
Right.
It's a silly model of social change, but the idea is that if you create enough violence, you will either intimidate a large conquering country into making concessions, or you will mobilize poor people everywhere to see that the large country is weak. And
Right.
therefore it can be taken down now to get the stimulus to create a larger conflict. It is an absolutely silly way to generate a larger conflict. It is not a very good way to make concessions. However, very often what we think of terrorism is more accurately thought in many cases as warlordism.
Okay.
What is going on with, we see the violence of ISIS, when we see kidnappings of Boko Haram, when we see the massacres occurring in South Sudan, what you are actually watching is systematic struggles for power for people who are engaged in violence for a living.
Okay.
Because there's nothing else left for them.
Okay.
Now, this is somewhat different than the Oklahoma City bomber. If you call both of those terrorism, you want to differentiate two very different things. The lone terrorist of the wealthy nations is typically a maladjusted individual.
Okay.
They are typically wealthy. After all, you need space to build a bomb. You need space to hide what you're doing. The Boston Marathon bombers constructed their bombs in one of the most expensive apartments in Watertown, Mass, which is a very high-rent town. They also had a sixth apartment in rural areas in New York. People, the individual bombers can buy pilot training tickets, they can buy supplies, they can have an armory of weapons, but they've got disposable cash.
Okay.
And this is no different than child molesting, pedophilia. For any one of us, this number one is, I'm going to be really bad.
Right.
I'm acting out. And that's really more the study of criminology or deviance.
Okay.
The systematic massacres in ISIS, setting up bombs in the streets of Baghdad.
Right.
That's a very different type of thing. Those are people who have essentially been thrown into warlordism because there's no more viable way to make a living.
Right.
And they're searching for something to get by. There's two simultaneous factors that are producing violence throughout the Middle East.
Right.
They coexist and they play off each other. The first one, which I'm going to give you, is a standard explanation given by security experts, and it's essentially correct. Youth unemployment in the Middle East is higher than that anywhere else in the world.
Okay.
We normally think of all of the global south as having poverty. But the youth unemployment, you're looking at youth unemployment rates in Algeria or Yemen or Lebanon or Iraq that run about 40%.
Wow. And when you say 40%, that's actual unemployment. That's not just informal sector employment.
Unemployment, doing nothing.
Okay.
Not having any kind of job.
Right.
I'm not talking about underemployment. And
Right.
Some of them would probably be considered out of the labor force. But that's a technique. Not working, not in school, not doing anything.
Right.
To give you a sense of things, that number in Mexico is 13%.
Okay.
That number in Ethiopia is 7%. That number in India is 10%.
Right.
40 versus 7. 40 versus 13.
Right.
The Middle Eastern countries are the only countries in the global south where the government is not significantly engaged in any strategy for economic development.
Okay.
Go to India with all of its poverty and you see lots of development activity. You go to Mexico with all its poverty, lots of development activity. Ethiopia has been leading sub-Saharan Africa with the high quality of its development activity.
Okay.
If you live in Cairo or you live in Damascus, you are living off an elite that's made its money off of oil. The technical term for this is a rentier elite.
Okay.
They have all of their money in foreign assets. They're as rich as they need to be. They have no interest in development. They may have an office that calls itself development office that in fact does nothing. You are looking at, even by sub-Saharan African standards, low levels of health and human services, low levels of education, low levels of the government doing anything to make anyone better off, the government doing anything to make people richer.
So if we have these two sociological bases of terrorism, high youth unemployment and lack of government engagement, why are those coming together in the Middle East? I mean, why is the Middle East so unique in that way?
Okay, the Middle East has a rural factor that is not replicated in most of the other parts of the world.
Okay.
And this is desertification. There are lots and lots of poor slums all over the world where slum kids do bad things. In El Salvador, they join drug gangs. In Brazil, they join drug gangs. In Cairo, you might join a warlord group. In northern Nigeria, you might join Boko Haram. The rural situation that you have in the Middle East is that global warming is not our most important environmental problem, as serious as it is. Everything you heard about global warming is true. But what is happening is that the Sahara Desert and the Great Middle Eastern deserts are expanding.
Right.
As they, I'll tell you why they expand in a minute. But as they expand, they take villages that used to be viable agricultural or herding villages, and they destroy them. What is happening is that all over the world there's some kind of population boom. Where you don't have a rentier state, in a place like Mexico or India or Ethiopia, the government provides birth control that puts in measures to keep the population down.
Right.
In Syria, Iraq, northern Nigeria, or countries, the population is growing on very fragile ecosystems. As that population grows, that population lives off of farming and herds. They take this delicate, weak, continuous land, and the goats and the sheep eat all the greenery. That's the greenery, what they eat. Once the greenery is gone, the land no longer holds water.
Right.
Once the land no longer holds water, there's no longer any agriculture. Once the land no longer holds water, the goats have nothing to eat. The village suddenly finds itself starving. This is happening throughout the bottom half of the Sahara Desert. It's happening in the Arab Peninsula. If you look, the areas where this is happening is called, the technical term is the semi-arid.
Okay.
The semi-arid consists of the northern Nigeria, where Boko Haram works, Chad, which sends its people out to be mercenaries, South Sudan, where first of all South Sudan fought a war to get free of Sudan, and then the Dinka and the Nuer turned on themselves and engaged in fratricidal warfare, Eastern Ethiopia, Somalia, which is all gang warfare on land, and they've turned to piracy because there's no longer sustainable villages, so people go to the coast and they hijack oil tankers.
Right.
Yemen, the scene of one of the bloodiest civil wars on the planet. East Syria, West Iraq, East Syria and West Iraq, that's ISIS country. All of ISIS is on the semi-arid. Kurd land is on the semi-arid. Why are there so many mercenaries fighting in other people's wars? There's nothing for Kurds to do in Kurd land, so they rent themselves out as soldiers. It's the only way to earn a living.
And it's interesting, you're talking about semi-arid places that are experiencing social change, not the full arid high desert.
The full arid is the pictures you see of the Sahara with just dunes and nothing else. Nobody lives on full arid.
Okay.
You can't live on full arid. I mean, you have the occasional wandering river tribesmen, those very nomadic people like the Bedouins, but nomadic people live in a village that can be destroyed, although there are oases are being destroyed fairly systematically. But the semi-arid was much more popular than the arid. And the semi-arid, in Taliban is almost entirely based on semi-arid.
Okay. So,
And so, yeah. What do you do when you lose your village? Well, most people, when they lose their livelihood, there's only three viable options. You can go, quote unquote, breaking bad, you turn to crime. And so, human trafficking, smuggling, adultery. You turn to warlordism because a politician will pay your bills. You find some politician with the security force and sell yourself out. Or you go to school. So a lot of people graduate to the capital city for school. Frankly, educational prospects in Syria or Nigeria aren't that great. Well, Nigeria is not bad. Certainly for Chad or Somalia, educational possibilities are negligible. Note that many terrorist groups operate schools. School is real, and school is often something you do when you can't work. So it fills your days with a sense of purpose, with a sense of meaning. Even if you don't join any political group, you just go to the school, they'll let you just go to the school. What something like an ISIS does is ISIS runs smuggling, it sells rare artifacts, it's in crime, it's a warlord who's in power, and it runs schools and has a religious program. So ISIS represents the perfect response to a set of people who've lost everything they can do by day, and they need to find something useful to do with their time and their energies, or their sense of purpose. No one wants to be in the slums. You show up in the slums, you're disreputable, you're a scum, you're a criminal, you're a lowlifer. People who live in slums live as the eternally disrespected, as the eternally hated, and you live off the parts of that good. You go to these schools, you join these people, and someone tells you you're a hero. Someone tells you you're right. Someone tells you that you have a vital and unique function to perform. Nobody's telling you that in slums.
So all the September 11th hijackers were highly educated. These weren't ignorant people, misguided people, obviously, but not ignorant.
The Osama bin Laden operation was different, and people tend to forget that there are many, many different forms of organizing terrorism. ISIS does not work the way that Osama bin Laden did. Osama bin Laden was very centralized. ISIS was very decentralized. Bin Laden's organization was essentially for idle, middle-class people. He recruited heavily from wealthy Saudi Arabians who did not have a problem in the world. But if you notice, they haven't crashed very many airplanes into buildings in 9/11. That kind of movement has become increasingly rare.
Okay.
And even as Osama bin Laden migrated to other countries, essentially changing all of the organization, the Somali organization looks nothing like the original 9/11 organization.
Okay.
You're now dealing heavily with teenagers and youth who've got nothing else to do, and who are now coming from this poorer trend. One hallmark of this, if you think about it, we haven't had very many problems with people flying to American and European pilot schools and then misusing their pilot education to do something dramatic. You have to be wealthy to be able to fly to another country and sign up for pilot class.
Right.
So that was a unique configuration.
I'm going to put up the phone numbers for call-in lines, just in case we have anyone listening who'd like to call in. To call in, just call on Skype. That's Skype S-Babones. Or you can reach me on the U.S. call-in line. That's a 412 area code. It's just an ordinary U.S. phone number, 412-567-6798. Or here in Australia, you can call on my New South Wales number. That's 02-8003-6853. And I'm just going to leave those numbers on the screen while we continue to talk. If anyone wants to call in, just call in while we're talking. We'll take a break to take your call. Now, Sam, I'd like to get from here to there. You've talked about these root causes of youth unemployment and lack of government engagement and development. And you've talked a lot about the education and that the connection between education provision and terrorism, why is one causing the other? I mean, how do we get from your two root causes to the final product of terrorism?
There's a lot of different roads to that, and a lot of it depends on the particular circumstances involved. The normal thing that you think about the piracy in Somalia.
Okay.
Think about kidnapping of Boko Haram. Okay? This is essentially part of they're very, very different causes, and there's very different roots. Piracy is just frankly rational crime. Let's rob a boat, make some money.
Right.
No different. Pirates. There's a long tradition of piracy in Somalia. It was effectively wiped out during the British colonial period when the British ruled the waves, and they didn't like pirates in any country. They took care of pirates everywhere. And then it basically was reborn after the neoliberal period of the 1990s, when the Somali government was to some extent keeping most of the villages and tribal groups quiet and economically developing by basically large crude cash payments to people.
Right.
And essentially, most of the regions were bought off with direct government payments, not quite the same as a development program. And what happened is that during the neoliberal crisis in Somalia, the Somali government got gutted. The IMF came in and said no more payments to anyone. Well, essentially, with down near bankrupt, and with desertification rising, they basically all went to the beach and started navies. Or they basically went to Mogadishu, the capital city, and started fighting among themselves to control the city for whatever wealth could be obtained within the city.
Right.
One way, it was fairly economic crime. Now note, at a place like Chad, in Kurdistan, no one has particular grievances. What the Kurds are into, and what the Chads are into, was simple mercenary soldierdom.
Okay.
We've got nothing else we can do for a living. We will kill whoever you pay us to kill.
But
And
forms
so
of
often they could be motivated. In the case of the Iraq conflict against ISIS, they have their own motivations. The radicals in the
But these are forms of organized violence, kind of what you've called warlordism. These are not examples of terrorism.
Well, to some extent they are, because Boko Haram is, well, first of all, Somalians have, absolutely a good part of piracy is making sure people are good and afraid of your pirates. Okay? But let's even move to say Boko Haram. What are we trying to do in Boko Haram? We're going to kidnap schoolgirls.
Right.
Now, first of all, you're demonstrating that Nigeria is part of warlordism, which is often about attempts to gain control of a country. And certainly, this is what ISIS was trying to create a caliphate, an independent republic crossing traditional Westphalian lines for Iraq and for Syria that would be their own country. And it was straightforward political conquest. The northern Nigerian rebels, and for that matter, the southern Sudan rebels and the ethnic groups, are in exactly the same game. In the case of northern Nigeria, well, Nigeria itself has maybe thousands of ethnic groups, but it breaks into three clusters. A very economic, highly educated group in the southeast that controls the oil economy and controls the economy today, technocratic, well-run, highly educated, westernized feminists. A set of Yoruba and other groups in the southwest that are intermediate but involved in a lot of what's going on with the wealth in Lagos. And then a northern area, which used to be Hausa, but the Boko Haram people are not particularly Hausa, they're from other groups. The old northern Nigerian folks have been cut out of the economy and not being westernized. We're going to run the military and take what we want by force. And they would control Nigeria militarily and then take oil money just and graft and line their pockets with. And this is how Nigeria got its early reputation for being super corrupt.
Okay.
The Boko Haram crowd is not the same as the Hausa military crowd, but the same logic. We want the oil money. We want control of the nation. If you play the education game, we lose, but we're not in it. Because you dumped all the education on those Igbo people. You don't like Igbo people. You don't like their feminist rules.
Right.
So we're going to be as un-Igbo as you can possibly be and create such mayhem up here in the north, you're going to have to give us some cash and some power. So it's essentially still a political play for power in Nigeria.
Well, but
And that's warlordism.
Well, I'm curious about that because is Boko Haram really a terrorist group? I mean, I know it spreads terror, but are they abducting girls as to hold them hostage to demand oil money, or are they abducting girls as warlords to force them into marriages and rape them? I mean, I'm not excusing that kind of behavior. I'm saying that's not terrorism. Sorry?
Are those two goals inconsistent? And keep in
Well,
mind,
they're not inconsistent, but they're different.
They're different, and I think one of the things that we're concerned largely, if you ask me, I use the word terrorism because it's what people want to hear about.
Okay.
In fact, the narrow form of terrorism of committing random acts of violence in order to mobilize people to rise up in opposition did apply to the destruction of the World Trade Center. But even the ethnic violence in France, or ethnic violence in England, where angry ethnic nationals will basically just, that's not really the same as terrorism anymore. That's a certain amount of ethnic hostility. What has happened, when I think about these things from my own private analytical use, I think of this as violence. Now, the thing about violence is that we tend to accept certain kinds of violence as okay, like when the Americans and the British do it, then it's okay. Okay? I'm not particularly on that boat, but also certain kinds of violence, like routine domestic violence, or a plain, ordinary mugging,
Right.
you would not particularly deal in this. But to some extent, there's what I'm going to call, I think if you needed a funny name to call it, I don't think it's wrong if they talk about political. And I would certainly say that the Taliban, ISIS, bombings in Cairo, bombings in Yemen, are clearly political violence.
Right.
And when you commit violence for political purposes, whether you're the Irish Republican Army or people fighting over Palestine, the intent, in fact, even when you commit violence for political purposes, France versus Germany in World War I, or us dropping a nuclear bomb on Hiroshima. There is more of this coming. You better settle, because what's going to happen to you is awful beyond belief if you want to keep fighting. And otherwise, we're just going to keep fighting until you're entirely paralyzed and suffer an excruciating amount. Political violence. Political violence includes assassinations and other things. So I don't want to get too caught up in the definitions, but clearly most of what is American citizen or an Australian citizen called terrorism is not true terrorism, but it's orthodox political violence.
Okay. But if we want to reduce terrorism, I mean, you've thrown out here a lot of causes of terrorism, a lot of things that make sense about what drives people towards terrorism. What do we do about it? I mean, we can't change the fact that certain regions are semi-arid. We probably can't change global warming. What in the more immediate sense can be done to reduce or eliminate terrorism?
Now, you've got a number of approaches. I'll talk fancy schmancy fantasy, which would be a cure, but my unrealistic, and they'll give you what you do in a lousy world. Ideally, sustainable development solves this problem. If these frontier states were developing their nations, this would be fine. Desertification is disgustingly easy to fix.
Really?
You had a peaceful, well-run nation, you could turn this easiest ecological problem in the world to fix in the world. You do several things. You, one, put in fertility control, get the population down. Two, there are any one of a number of wells and water techniques you can create that save water so it does not evaporate. In ecological engineering, this is both that common, easy to understand, and cheap. Of course, no one is in hot water conservation wells And no one is implementing sustainable agriculture under the Civil War on.
Okay.
And no one's going to do that in East Syria because East Syria is not governed by Damascus. Damascus is far more important to putting in their money by trying to save their regime than they are about running socio-ecological projects in Syria. And likewise, Baghdad, basically Iraq, grants itself as basically the Republic of Southeastern Iraq. And the entire western and northern part of the country is essentially left alone. But it's not hard to do sustainable agriculture, put in kinds of ground cover that reproduce themselves a little better than they do and hold water a little bit better, put in good row. So this could be fixed. This is a lot easier to fix global warming.
Right.
It's about the same order of magnitude as saving the oceans, where, let's conserve fish. Okay, let's leave the fisheries alone for a little bit. Let them restock. It's not very difficult to do.
Okay.
However, given the current political situation, that's not going to happen.
Okay.
If fertility runs amok, if population grows, and you do not get developmentalist governments in the Middle East, which is probably what's going to happen, then essentially you've got two approaches, one of which I think the Obama administration illustrated fairly well. We're going to let violent places fight civil wars, and we're just going to be involved, and no matter how many humanitarian horrible things happen, we're just going to stay out of it, which is essentially what Obama did in Syria, essentially what Obama did in Yemen, and essentially what Obama did with, he did stop pirates. He poked in and tried to keep pirates controlled, but essentially one of the reasons why Russia's in Syria, and that the forces that have supported Americans have gotten free in Syria, is that Obama simply didn't get a military assistance. Whether that's a right or wrong move is hugely debatable, but that's one approach to the war is it's so far away, and I think that's actually what a lot of the West is doing.
Right. But let me go back to your first intervention, which was fertility reduction. Of course, that's been extraordinarily controversial. Now, you and I, as sociologists, are both aware that one of the best mechanisms of fertility reduction is women's empowerment. Yet, in many of these societies, women's empowerment is an extraordinarily controversial agenda, which, precisely because it empowers people who've been disempowered, right? So how do you get that going? I mean, how do you start a program?
There's a lot of Middle Eastern feminism is not as rare as you think. Pretty much all through North Africa on the Mediterranean coast, feminism rules. Okay. So in a place like Tunisia, a place like Algeria, a place like Morocco, there's large cash export-oriented agriculture.
Okay.
They sell agricultural goods to the European Union. They know to do business with the European Union. The European Union wants educated people. They like doing business with women, and they go back and forth enough between Rome and Tunis, or between Algiers and Paris, that they know about the good life in Rome and they know about the good life in Paris.
Right.
And so in these settings, you actually see high levels of female education, high levels of female participation, and significant reductions in fertility. So to treat these, also, before we think that Islam is an issue, Malaysia is one of the most technocratic, feminist, women, high female participation in the labor force, high female education countries in the world. It's absolutely Islamic. And what they do is that they use the Islamic teachings to generate no sexual harassment for women, and women have to be taken seriously. So if I'm a female school teacher, I'm not here to pour you coffee. You can't see my body, so you're not here to make a joke about how I look. I'm exclusively here to teach your children. Is that understood? So in many ways, a lot of these Middle Eastern elements have lots of capacity for feminism.
Right.
As you point out, development causes feminism, and feminism causes development. Yet a positive step anywhere in the way is a feedback circle going that starts improving things.
Right.
That's a very simple thing to do. In places where the fighting is not immediately involving women, where women have to stay home for their own children. In Taliban Afghanistan, women who go out are in great danger.
Right.
But even, I'm going to give you a non-Taliban setting. Ray Blumberg writes about this in Uganda. In Uganda, even under the Lord's Resistance Army, which was a terrorist group, was a Christian terrorist group. A lot of people don't, Christian terrorist groups really exist. So they did all the terrible things that ISIS did, but they were doing this in the name of Jesus Christ with crazy. However, they did not call their women white as much go on. The women would go out to rebuild the family farm. The women would go out and clean up the irrigation business. The women would go out and start marketing food. And underneath the male civil war, there was a female economy.
Really?
That was rebuilding in the ashes. And the women literally pacified Uganda and turned that area now into an area of normal economic growth. So that it is totally possible for women's own economic activities to be wholly sufficient to turn them around. Because also when the women worked on these activities, they kept the money. And keeping the money, one difference between what women do with money and what men do, men invest in status and buy bigger guns and brag in front of their friends. Women take the money, put it into a children's education. And so a boy might be trained to become a soldier under his father. He's trained to go to school and wear his school uniform and learn how to read under his mother. So as the women got power from their business, they pushed for more education. This produced more human capital. It gave Uganda the capacity to have a more modern economy. Blumberg refers to women's power as a magic potion for development. It's pretty much true. That's the way it is.
Okay. I think we're going to have to leave it there, unless there's anything crucial you think we've left out.
Kids don't commit terrorism.
Right. Samuel Cohn, thank you very much for appearing on the show. I'd love to have you back in a few months. I hope you can find the time for it. But really, I appreciate you doing the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Midnight in America is going to take a hiatus while I'm traveling in China. We'll be back in 3 weeks with our next program. Thanks, everyone, for watching.